The Story of Reynard. Book 2, Master Reynard's Tricks. Chapter 1. How Reynard, as a trial run, stole Isegrim's hams. After leaving Ermelin, he went straight along a narrow bridle path which plunged beneath the hornbeams. This was a part of the forest close to Malpass which he liked because of its lofty trees, their smooth trunks gleaming with silver, and their billowing curtains of hanging leaves. But soon he came to a wilder part, with dark stunted little oak trees and fierce bristling thickets. The lower branches of the oak trees were dried up and eaten with pale lichen. Broken pieces fell onto the ground, mingling with the tangle of clematis, brambles, and black buckthorn.
"Who's there?"
growled a rough voice. Reynard had only just time to compose himself. Isegrim stood before him, his teeth already bared to the gums, with the bushy fur on his neck that Reynard remembered well. He came forward in trembling humility, his coat dull, his eyes glazed, and his nose dry. "Good day, uncle." The wolf's den was near, he knew, but even if he had not known it, a smell of stale blood and raw venison would have been more than enough to tell him, without the gracious welcome he had received.
"What are you doing in these parts?" said Isegrim. "Go on your way. I'm master here."
"Out of charity," said the fox. "I'm hungry."
"Nothing," the wolf went on. "I can see you looking around, thinking yourself clever and taking me for a simpleton. But if you think you're going to find my larder, you're wasting both your cunning and your time."
"Damnation," thought Reynard. "Good simpleton, you'll lead me there yourself, as though by the paw, to the very place where lies the hare, kid, or sheep, whatever it is, to your overflowing larder. For this time you've made a kill. I can see that just by looking at you. You're comfortable. You've a full stomach, and I can hear Lady Ursa the she-wolf playing behind there with your growling cubs." And he was highly delighted, for he could see that Isegrim first looked sideways towards a place in the thicket, and then, almost in spite of himself, moved imperceptibly closer as though to forbid access to it. But Reynard only pretending to shiver in a more pitiful manner, snivelling and weeping in a way that would soften the heart of a usurer.
"Back!"
growled Isegrim, jumping forward. And Reynard, within himself, thought, "Thank you, my hardest task is over." So it was there, behind that holly bush. The leaves which Isegrim had spread over the dead flesh were beginning to fade a little. The fox looked away and quickly drew back 3 paces, as if he were obeying Isegrim's brutal command. But he had purposely disarranged the brushwood curtain, and he spoke amid much bowing and scraping. "Goodbye, uncle. I was just passing. I'll go now. It would have been very kind of you just to have given me a piece of skin. Just a bone with a little flesh round it. But let's say no more about it. May everyone in your Galaran den keep friendly memories of me. First you, Lord Wolf, then Lady Ursa too, and the 3 young lords, adorable wolf cubs, who were born when the willow tree was in flower."
"Is that you, Reynard, you bad boy?"
A wolf's voice again, but softer this time. The undergrowth was pushed aside, and Lady Ursa stood there, large, majestic, and a little plump for such a young mother. She had the same pale yellow eyes as her mate, but colour did not govern expression, for her look was as soft as her voice. Where was the trembling Reynard now, so pitiful and subdued? He looked frisky, his eyes shone, and his nostrils quivered. "How beautiful you are, Lady Ursa!" he cried. And turning to Isegrim, as though she had heard nothing, she said,
"He only begged for a piece of skin, just a bone with some flesh round it."
And with her paw and nose she was already digging down under the bed of leaves.
"Taste it, Reynard, you poor hungry thing."
If it was a bone, then it was well hidden beneath the pink muff that enveloped it. If Reynard could not believe his eyes, he could believe his tongue and his palate. This was certainly not the flesh of a hunted animal. It was ham, slightly salty, unctuous, and melting, and as translucent as a church window.
"And we have lots of it," said Ursa proudly. 3 more, all equally enormous. All the farmer's larder comes this way. Isegrim's going back there tonight.
Reynard muttered something with his mouth full. Was it "thank you" or "more"? Isegrim growled. There was a sound like a bird call. It was Reynard's throat as he swallowed the last mouthful. He nodded his head. His eyes were moist with gratitude. Do you know? Do you know? He murmured twice.
Do you know what?
Asked the wolf and the she-wolf both together, each in a different tone of voice. Do you know what I would do if I were you? I would hide them somewhere else and say that somebody had stolen them from me.
Why?
Because of thieves.
Who knows where they are apart from you?
Said the wolf. I am one too many, said Reynard, for they are so tender and juicy. How can I tell if I can resist them myself? You can see for yourselves, but suppose one of your kind found them, your brother Primer, for example, or Bruin the bear, or Tibbet the cat, or some two-legged marauder like the horrible Outram Rufus, not to mention his dog Surly. There are so many of them who certainly wouldn't resist the temptation at all. No, believe me, hide them first, and when you've done that, noise it abroad that they've been stolen, and really make a fuss about it. He spread himself in saying more thank yous, wishing them joy and wealth, and then retired to wait for nightfall.
Is that you, Reynard, you bad boy?
Perhaps Lady Ursa spoke aloud in her dreams that night. Reynard must have made 3 journeys, 1 for each ham, for they were so heavy. As far as he was concerned, he partly followed his own advice. The hams were now hidden, but they were hidden at Malpas. And the next morning, long before he perceived the twisted oak trees of Gallerand, he knew that the wolves, if they had not followed his first piece of advice, were now following the second. What shouting, crying and howling there was, enough to warn and frighten all the beasts of the forest. But he, Reynard, cheerfully quickened his pace. His eyelids flickered as he looked at Isegrim and Lady Ursa, who were mourning the loss of their 3 hams as loudly as they could. I could hear you all the way from Malpas. You've been howling very well, uncle, and just in the right tone of voice. Anyone would believe that your hams had really flown away.
Flown away?
Roared Isegrim.
They've certainly flown, but not with their own wings. They have well and truly gone this very night. But if I find the thief, I'll strangle him with these very teeth. I'll break his backbone, and I'll rip the guts out of his belly.
He deserves it! Exclaimed Reynard. Guts and backbone by the wolf's teeth! Ha ha! And his eyelids flickered again as he whispered out of the corner of his mouth. Did I howl well too, uncle? Have I played your game well? But Isegrim howled more loudly than ever.
Stolen! Stolen! Stolen, I tell you!
And Lady Ursa moaned and wept.
Stolen! Stolen!
And the wolf cubs also whimpered.
Stolen! Stolen!
Reynard jumped for joy on the spot. Who would dare to say now, uncle, that you're strong but stupid? I can see that you're bright and sharp enough to deceive Reynard himself. Stolen! Stolen! I give in. I can't hold out any longer. I'm bursting with laughter. I'm splitting my sides. My stupidity will spoil everything. Stolen! Stolen! It's true, I swear it. Stolen! Stolen!